Hello and welcome to episode number 31 of The Closing Track, the official podcast of AnotherAscendingLark.com, where the faith that you believe collides with the movies and the music and everything else that you love. I'm Austin, your host, and I am joined across the table with, as always,
Brett, the founder of the Avengers.
So when you say the founder of the Avengers, are you talking like all the way back to the beginning founder of the Avengers, or are you talking like the recent era, so to speak, of the Avengers?
Just for the sake of simplicity, I'll say the original era. Like, I'm the one who approached Nick Fury and said, hey man, we got all these superheroes out here like me, and we need to bring them together for future alien attacks.
Oh, so you're talking like founding the Avengers in the universe?
Yes.
I was thinking you were like, you approached Stan Lee and was like, hey, Stan, you got all these great characters, but wouldn't it be cool if you like brought them all together and they did awesome things together?
Nah, I'm in the universe.
So you want to be in the universe?
Yes.
Well, where are you then? Did you get killed off early on? Did you die in the Battle of New York?
For now, I'm just kind of doing my own thing, honing my skills.
Are we going to see you in the Infinity Wars, either part?
The plan is to see me in the Infinity Wars.
So who's going to be your stunt double, since I know you well enough to know you can't do any of your stunts?
Chuck Norris.
He looks nothing like you. And he's old as dirt.
Fair enough. But they can put a wig on him. And they can grow his beard out.
No, that won't. You're a stick. Chuck Norris is a tank.
Okay, then I don't know who'll be my stunt double.
We'll let the writers and the casting director sort that out.
Yeah.
I was reading in preparation for this episode that apparently Scarlett Johansson was pregnant during the time that they were filming the Avengers, and they got 3 stunt doubles for her. And apparently some of the actors were so confused at times because apparently these other stunt doubles, like, they didn't have to try hard to make them look like Scarlett Johansson.
Wow.
And so, like, I think Chris Hemsworth was quoted as saying, like, yeah, I would start talking to one of them, and then I would realize that, oh wait, that's not the same one I talked to 5 minutes ago.
So there are 3 people out there that look exactly like Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, apparently so. Which I'm just like, what? Like, that's crazy. But I didn't know that she was pregnant during the filming of the Avengers.
Yeah, you'd be surprised to find out how many actors are pregnant while they're filming.
And
how many actors are drunk while they're filming.
No, yeah, well, duh.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a duh there. Yeah, we've got a skimmed down episode planned for you today. We're not going to do any news. Brett's got an album he's going to talk about, and then we are going to dive into the Avengers. So if you have not seen the Avengers, we are giving you this warning now. Don't keep listening to this episode.
We will discuss spoilers. It will be nearly impossible to discuss elements of this film without spoiling it.
Yes, this review is for the people who have seen it. If you don't want to see it or you don't have plans to see it, then fine. Keep on listening, whatever. And we won't talk spoilers until after Brett does his review or whatever. But no, if you haven't seen it yet and you plan on going and seeing it, just pause this episode. Save it on your phone or whatever, bookmark it in whatever on your internet or whatever, and don't finish it out until after you've seen it, and then you can come back and listen with it, because I mean I have no filter when it regards to keeping things hidden when it comes to dealing with a movie like this.
Hashtag no filter.
Hashtag no filter. Podcast style, review style, all the hashtags. So yeah, we'll get to that after Brett. You're talking about the new Zac Brown Band album, correct?
Yes.
So last week you made a prediction about the album. Was your prediction correct?
Yes and no.
What?
Okay. I'll just get into the review to sort of explain.
Yeah, because I'm already confused.
All right, the first track, Beautiful Drug. It is nowhere near the typical Zac Brown Band or typical country sound that I assume is out there. It is also not in the vein of Heavy as the Head. Heavy as the Head is the only song on here like that. Beautiful Drug sounds like an indie band.
What?
Yeah. I'm just like, did I get the album right? Like, I'm just listening to this confused.
That's bizarre.
And then, see, third track, also Remedy also is a very indie sounding track. This is the only song I really took big issue with because in it basically produces a universalistic viewpoint, quoting Jesus, Buddha, and Gandhi, and just going through this wishy-washy, love everyone, it doesn't matter sort of message. And I think the song's message can be wrapped up with one of the last lines in it, God is loving everyone.
I mean, that's surprising that they went so far as to like include other religions in its song. But then again, like for the broader country scene, there's already this like sub-universalistic like God loves everyone, saves everyone idea that's kind of dominant in the Christianity of country music. So
Yeah. Again, I wouldn't know that because, yeah.
I know this because my very first job, I worked at a grocery store in my old town. And I mean, like all grocery stores, it has, radio. It has radio speakers. And that's all we played. I pretty much have every single country song from the circa 2006 to circa 2009-ish memorized to a T. I could still sing them just because I heard them so intensely. But yeah, sorry.
And then after Remedy is Homegrown, which is sort of the first song on the album that actually sounds country. And you can probably tell what it's about based on the title. It's just about small hometown where you grew up, that sort of stuff. Very typical country music subject matter.
It's not about weed.
No, unfortunately. And then this next song is probably the most shocking song on this album for me. It's called Mango Tree featuring Sarah, whose last name I'll mispronounce, Bareilles.
Baracelli?
No, it's not Bareilles. If I was going to pronounce it in the actual French way, it'd be Bareilles. But
Yeah,
I don't think she pronounces it that way.
No clue.
Anyways, the song obviously features Sarah Bareilles. And when Zac Brown is singing along with her, it's basically a Frank Sinatra-style crooning song.
What happened to this band?
I don't know, but it's kind of awesome.
I'm intrigued now. I'm very much intrigued now.
I mean, I just heard this. I'm just like, what the deuce is happening? I mean, all these various styles at the beginning, they all were just so radically different that, you could easily just listen to one and be satisfied, but they somehow work as one full unit while standing on their own at the same time.
So there's synergy.
Basically.
That's good, especially for something like this. Synergy is essentially important.
And then after Mango Tree, Heavy is the Head, the song that made me interested in the album to begin with. Very heavy southern rock sound, very much a shock to a lot of people when it first came out, especially since, it's being played on rock stations.
Uh-huh.
And then after that, we sort of get away from the Hyde side in that it's the change in sound that they've pretty much been doing, and they go just straight country for the most part after that. A lot of them are, there's really not much to say about them because they're just straight country, and again, I don't know that much about country. The only other song I really feel I need to mention after that is Dress Blues, track 11, which is basically about young men going off to war, and then about, the families who they're leaving behind and that sort of stuff, and it was really good. I really liked it.
So it sounds like a very bipolar release.
Yes, it is a very bipolar release.
But then again,
it's called Jekyll and Hyde. I'm pretty sure they intended it to be that way.
The epitome of bipolar disorder.
And so, again, I don't like country, but I can listen to the country parts of this album and be like, okay, I appreciate the quality of this.
Is there a really high twang factor in the country parts?
Not really.
Okay.
Zac Brown doesn't really have a really heavy twang song.
Because I think at the end of the day, like when I'm listening to country, that's what's going to turn me off more than anything is if there's this like totally artificial like twang.
Yeah. And okay, and also I feel I need to say this when I say there's, country songs in this album, I don't mean Florida Georgia Line style where it's pop with a twang. It's actual country.
Okay, so it's like older school country then?
It's again,
Well, if you're not as familiar with
yeah,
country, I
not
guess
as
you
familiar
would-
with
I guess you
country.
wouldn't know that.
But I mean, there's fiddle in it, there's banjo, that sort of stuff. I mean, it doesn't have.
Would it play well on country radio?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like George Strait and all of the big name old school country stars sound. It's very different from that, from what I understand, but it's still actual country.
Okay. So, what would you pin this at?
I put it at an 8.5.
Okay.
I mean, this is a really good, solid release.
So it did. Your theory was correct with respect that it was going to be containing two different elements of sound, but you were incorrect in what those other elements were. Basically.
Yes, like I was expecting it to just straight up be Southern rock country, and it was not just Southern rock and country.
So does it make you like happier or more satisfied that they went out broader beyond your expectation? Or
Well, a little bit of both, because I mean, Heavy as the Head, I love that song so much that I would have liked to hear more songs like that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like Mango Tree, Beautiful Drug, those were great songs, and I'm glad to have heard them.
Cool. Cuckoo Cuckoo. That's fantastic. I don't have a review this week. I just didn't get enough plays of it to feel like I had a solid opinion of it. Next week, though, guess what comes out next week?
What?
It's the new Mumford & Sons,
Which I call dibs on.
which you did call dibs on. I will certainly be listening to that whenever it comes out. I've been listening to this, they've put out like 3 singles for it already, and or 3 like tracks of it already, and I'm nervously optimistic about the new Mumford & Sons. I'm very much nervously optimistic about it, and so hopefully we'll be able to talk about that next week. Other than that, though, there wasn't much coming out next week that I felt really necessarily whatever to mention or whatever. So, all right, this is the part of the show where the aforementioned spoiler warning now takes effect. So if you are listening and you have not seen the Avengers, but you plan on it, or if you just don't give a crap and you want to listen to the show anyway, even though you don't give a crap, this is the part where you press pause, close your browser, close the app, and plug your ears with something else, because we are going to spoil a good chunk of everything. So in 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so now let's get into our extended review of Avengers: Age of Ultron. It's been a while since we've done a movie review.
Yeah, not since Believe Me.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've done a movie review, so I'm excited to be able to break this down. And we're going to break this down Francis Schaeffer style, #Schaeffer style, and we're going to do it like we do our album reviews. There's 4 criteria that we use here for the show, and then for another ascending mark, and we approach music and movies by 4 criteria. The first one is the technicality of it, how good of a movie or album, or just the technical elements of it. Like, is it good musicianship? Is it good cinematography? You get the idea. The second one is the validity. Is this movie a honest representation of the writers or the directors or the people involved with it? Or is this album, truly a reflection of the artist, or is this just something that was conjured up for the sake of making money? Third one is the worldview element. This is the one where we always have a lot of fun, because we assess the themes and the content of the album. We stack it up against the Christian worldview, and we see where it aligns with the Christian worldview, where it doesn't line up with the Christian worldview. And then the last one is the integration of the content and the vehicle. Basically, how well does the message translate through the medium that it's presented? So, all right. So, first question. Which one is better? First one or second?
I don't know if I can give a complete answer to that. I honestly think the two of them stand excellently side by side.
Okay. I disagree. I think the first one is plainly better. And I'm saying the second one is bad. I thought the second one was great. I think this is a great movie. I just think the first one is better. And in my remarks of it, I will try to reflect that. So first, let's go into like the technicality of it. So there's a amazing amount of green screening going on in this film, and I was honestly very disappointed by that.
Why?
Because
I loved it.
It was green screening is easy nowadays. Green screening is, I mean, yes, obviously you have to generate something to put on the green screen, but it is infinitely easier in the bigger picture to just do a green screened backdrop on a computer than it is to actually construct a realistic looking set. I think that's becoming a very lost art in movie making, where we're just resorting to CGI generated backgrounds instead of building actual sets. That's one of the things that I'm really excited about the new Star Wars movie, is that J.J. Abrams is wanting to do the opposite, and J.J. Abrams is trying to get as much like physical things in the shot as possible, and trying to rely as less as possible on
As evidenced by the actual droid
Yes.
that rolled into an interview.
Yes, as evidenced by the actual BB-8 droid that rolled into the Star Wars Celebration thing. This is the exact opposite. There is so much CGI in this movie, which, I mean, CGI is good and fine, but
Well, I mean, you have to have it for the Hulk, at least.
oh, absolutely. Like, I'm not. They resurrect Andre the Giant from the dead and paint him green.
No,
and,
Andre the Giant is too small to be an actual Hulk.
well, then who else would it be?
Get one of those world's tallest men from China and have them severely bulk up.
There are tall men in China.
Yeah, it's amazing, but the world's tallest people, for some reason, have come from Asia.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of friends that are really tall Asians, and I don't understand it. It's either they're like super tall, or they're like at the short end of the spectrum.
I would like to take this opportunity to say that the closing track and Another Sending Lark are not racist against Asians.
No, we're huge anime fans.
Yes.
We watched some of the strangest anime in Japanese ever last night.
And it was awesome.
This has nothing to do with the Avengers, where the coffee is getting to us. But anyway, as far as the technicality goes, there was nothing that this movie did that I thought was in any way visually or technically innovative. It was beautiful. Like, it was certainly really good eye candy.
Yeah, especially, again, spoilers, whenever they freaking flew a city into the sky in hopes of crashing it down onto the earth.
That was a nice variation of a theme. That was definitely an interesting variation of a theme. Although, I will say that the whole city being destroyed and left in ruins, whatever motif, that's starting to get a little old. I know that.
Well, with the situation that was happening, though, I mean, there's really no other way than to completely obliterate the city. Like,
Right.
You weren't going to be able to safely land that city.
Right, that's why it's a variation of a theme. Like, it was a nice twist on the motif, but the motif itself, I think, is starting to run its course a little bit. Because it's starting to happen to, like, every single superhero movie now, where, massive battle in a city, at the very end, destruction everywhere.
I mean, that's staying true to the comics. That happened all the time.
It did. And that's fine, but I don't know. I thought the twist on the variation was nice, but everything about this movie, from the technical standpoint, is well done. Like, I don't have any technical issues with the movie. It's very well produced. It's very well directed, well acted. The writing is sharp and to the point. The writing is actually very hilarious at times. I thought this one. I will say, I did think this one was funnier than the first one.
Yeah, and I've heard some people were annoyed by that, but I mean,
I
loved it.
I thought it was great that it was funnier, considering how much darker this one was.
And it makes sense too, because in the first movie, I mean, they were just beginning to form, and some of them absolutely hated each other. But now that they've been a team for a while, they know each other well enough to have banter. Like, one line I have to mention after the opening fight and everything, when Bruce Banner is back from being Hulk, and he asks how his fighting wasn't expecting a code green, and then Thor says something like, "The gates of hell are full of the screams of your enemies."
Yeah, there were quite a few really funny lines in this one, and even just subtly funny scenes. I mean, the scene immediately after the Vision, comes out or whatever, and they're talking with the Vision or whatever, and trying to figure out, okay, is he on our side or is he Voltron's, whatever. He gives this this monologue, whatever, and then he hands Thor his hammer.
He's like, I don't know how to prove to you that I'm trustworthy. I might not be able to, but I will stand with you, and hands Mjolnir to Thor.
And I mean, that whole entire serious scene just immediately twisted into sheer hilarity, because earlier in the movie there's this sequence where Thor's like, all right, if you can pick up my hammer, you can rule Asgard or whatever, and they all try to do it and fail.
Yeah, there's even a part where like Tony Stark tries to pick it up, goes, I'll be right back. He grabs an Iron Man gauntlet, puts it on, and has rocket boosters to help him. Then he gets War Machine to help him, and they're both unable to do it. And this whole scene, there's only one thing that really ticked me off, is that the only two people in the comics that have been shown to be able to wield Thor's hammer besides Thor have been Hulk, and that's because sheer power, and he was basically only able to get off like 1 week swing. And the only other person pure enough to wield Mjolnir was Captain America,
who didn't move it.
He did budget slightly.
And Thor kind of freaked out there for a second.
Yeah, so it's like another funny part, just eyes wide open, like, oh crap. And then like, oh, well, I can't get it. Thor just resumes a comfortable seating position and smiles awkwardly.
Yeah, it's stuff like that from a technical standpoint, I mean, it's solid. It's not innovative in any particular strict sense, but it's solid.
And I also have to say, one thing I loved about this movie, unlike the first Avengers, it was not an Iron Man movie with other Avengers in there.
No, I definitely agree there. But since Iron Man is my favorite,
Yeah, I like Iron Man, but I mean, he has more solo movies than any of the other
he does
superheroes. I mean, he had two. Most of them had one.
Captain America has two.
Yeah, well, at the time of Avengers 1,
Yeah,
each of them had one, except for Iron Man, who had two, and then Hawkeye had like a 2-minute cameo in Thor, and Black Widow was featured prominently in Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, we don't need another Iron Man movie.
No.
Let's see these other guys.
No, we really don't.
And also, one thing I was ticked about the first movie, Hawkeye within like 5 minutes becomes an enemy, as basically the puppet of Loki.
Master of
and
Puppets.
Then, awesome album. And then at the end of the movie, breaks the spell and everything, and he can fight. So we really didn't see him much at all, but in this one, it really focused on developing Hawkeye's character.
Yes, I'll definitely grant that. So, from a technicality standpoint, I'm gonna give numbers to this, Brett. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I'm gonna pin this as far as the technicality goes. I'm gonna pin it at 8.5 because it's solid. I mean, it doesn't have any weaknesses, but it's also not particularly innovative in any like technical sense either. There's nothing groundbreaking that they did in this movie. They just did it really well.
I think that's fair.
So, validity. This is probably the one area where I think maybe Francis Schaeffer's approach to evaluating art is weak, because it might be a little weak, because if we were to evaluate this solely on like the expression of Stan Lee's, is this an actual representation of like Stan Lee and Josh Whedon's worldview? Are they being true to themselves in doing this? I don't even know how you can ask that question when this is clearly a comic book movie, and the beliefs and the views of the writers are essentially secondary to the story that it's making.
Yeah.
So I don't know really how to pin that, although the other angle that you could look at it was, did they make this movie the way that they wanted to make it?
I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with Joss Whedon's work, but it was a very Whedon-y movie.
Oh, yeah. No, it was definitely a very Whedon-y movie. It was certainly a very Whedon-y movie. And I think that counts enough. But at the same time, I also thought that there were some things in there that were mainly for the appeasement of the critics, and mainly for, I don't know.
Such as?
I think one of the things that Whedon has been tried to do in this film, as evidenced by the surprising amount of like touchy-feely, well, not touchy-feely, but like, the feelsy scenes, for the lack of a better phrase, that he was trying to give a little bit more of a human element to it.
Okay, that's a Whedon thing, though.
Yes, that is a Whedon thing. Yes, that's also one of the things that that the first one got some flack for, was that the characters felt a little bit distant and lifeless and not necessarily relatable.
Which, again, I can understand that aspect in the first movie because they weren't a built team. They had to figure out how to work together, so they're not going to open up to each other.
No, I agree. I mean, this one I had to really think about because Schaefer's whatever here. I don't. It needs to be updated or modified slightly for stuff like this because it's not the most easy. It's not the easiest criteria to approach with. Validity wise, I mean, I don't know what to put it at other than I'm just going to put it at a 7. It's a Whedon-y film, sure. It's faithful to Stan Lee, whatever. But then again, I don't know how. I don't really know on that point.
And again, since you mentioned Stan Lee, it just popped in my head. I remember Stan Lee's scene being funny, but I'm brain farting on what exactly happened.
It was at the after party or whatever after they took down the Hydra base or whatever, and Thor is offering them some like Asgardian, liquor.
Oh, yeah.
And
he's like, I fought in Vietnam, I can handle this.
Yeah, and then he's like having to be carried off by 2 other guys because he's so drunk.
Yeah. And I mean, he basically had like a shot of this stuff and was like,
Yeah, that was actually a really funny scene. So, worldview.
Okay, before we get into it, I just have to say, if anyone is offended by anything in this movie, Christian worldview-wise, it should be everything about Thor.
Yes! Thank you!
I'm just like, okay, so the existence of 9 realms, one of them being Asgard, and all of the Norse gods are real, and all of this mythology is real. That's not what you're offended by.
So, background to that. There have been, and we're not going to say where we've been seeing these out of respect for the people who have been saying this in the places where it's come from, whatever. On Facebook, some groups that Brett and I participate in, there have been a couple of occasional remarks made by some Christians that the Vision, or not even just the Vision, but the movie itself,
Mainly the Vision and Ultron.
mainly the Vision and Ultron is blasphemous. Like, it is committing the sin of blasphemy.
Like, I remember, I was looking at this thread as it developed, and Austin was at the camp that shall not be named, and, we're just talking about stuff, and I go, oh, and by the way, in insert group here, they're discussing about whether or not Age of Ultron is blasphemous, and he's like, what?
I mean, I was like, okay, well, why did they think that? And then you tell me why, and I'm just like, that's it? That's all they're basing it on?
Yeah, and okay, we'll get into more details about this here in a sec, but again, if they're not offended by the existence of Thor, then...
See, and then they're saying part of the reason why they're lumping Ultron is because Ultron makes a couple of references to, like, Noah, and has some other biblical allusions in some of Ultron's lines.
And he interprets them very incorrectly.
Yeah, extremely incorrectly. Absolutely incorrectly. And then he sets up his base, Ultron's base, so to speak, in an old abandoned church.
Yeah.
And then the Vision, after the Vision, comes to life or whatever, he's looking around at the guys that are there, whatever, and he's like, well, I'm not Ultron. I'm not Jarvis. I'm not Tony Stark. I am. And
yeah, he's like, I am.
Yeah, I am. It was, people are taking that particular statement as he's trying to make an allusion to, Yahweh's statement to Moses, I am who I am.
Which at first when I heard that, I was like, wait, to be fair, I did like, wait a minute. What the heck is he saying here? And then think about it more. And I attribute it closer to Descartes.
Yes.
I think, therefore I am. He's not saying I am the God. He's saying I am, as in I am existing.
Again, if they're concerned about somebody, making the claim of, God, there's this guy named Thor who already claims to be a god.
Well, actually, like at one point in Thor, they talked about going to Earth and showing their powers where they're worshipped as gods. They themselves claim no godhood.
Okay, but still, that's a similar thing.
Yeah.
And
also throughout the film, Ultron has a very extreme god complex.
Oh, yeah.
And he wants to reset humanity and bring judgment on them.
But he's not the first villain to have a god complex.
Not at all.
No, he's nowhere near the first villain to have a god complex.
I mean, if anything, I applaud the presentation of Ultron in the way they did because it really brought out the god complex in him.
I mean, honestly, if I had to choose between Loki and Ultron as as the better villain, I have to choose Ultron.
And also, there are no annoying fangirls who are like, "Oh, I'm still in love with Ultron." I'm like,
oh gosh,
okay, you're not in love.
would just be creepy.
With Loki. You like Tom Hiddleston. Loki, if you haven't noticed, is not a good person at all in the movies.
No, there's no distinction there. But yeah, but the broader worldview of this artificial universe, it's very pluralistic. It's very I don't want to say relativistic, but I mean, the Marvel comic book series, even though it's got some characters like Captain America who have Christian backgrounds as individuals, the universe as a whole is no friend of the Christian worldview. It never has been.
And I mean, it's not like it's trying to go against the Christian worldview. It's just making a good fantasy story.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that people, I think, I thought they read way too much into it. I mean, I'm able to say yes, the Marvel universe as an ontological creation is not compatible with the Christian worldview.
Not at all.
No, not at all. But then again, it's also not trying to actively opposing the Christian worldview in any sense that it's chose that frame of mind out of a deliberate attempt to smack against the Christian worldview. This universe wouldn't exist unless pluralism was assumed.
Yeah.
You had to assume pluralism, a theological and a theological pluralism, where in order to get this wonderful universe that you have.
Exactly. I mean, we can watch this and know, okay, there's not Valhalla, there's no Asgard, these people aren't real, but still appreciate the storyline. And one other thing I have to bring up, the main thing that people were saying about the whole blasphemous thing is that Joss Whedon, as an atheist, is actively attacking Christianity.
If that was what he was trying to do, he failed miserably.
And people seem to be forgetting the one line that every Christian freaked out about in Avengers 1, where Captain America said, "There's only one God, ma'am, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that." I remember watching this midnight premiere, and there was a certain quote-unquote Christian group from WT, whose name I will not mention, that I severely disagree with.
They were there?
Yes.
What?
They show up to a lot of stuff because their leader is very obsessed with superheroes and brings them up a lot.
Okay.
But anyways, and when this line was said, this group, very boisterously and annoyingly, started screaming in applause, standing up, clapping. I mean, I'm just like, stop. I want to hear this movie.
I mean,
and,
yeah.
And I'm just like, people are like, yay, they had a character confirm Christianity. No, he didn't. He confirmed monotheism.
Yeah, yes, he confirmed monotheism. He did not explicitly name Christ. He said there's only one God. Well, that's an affirmation of both Judaism and Islam.
I mean, and it is most likely that Captain America, being where he's from and the kind of person he is a Christian.
Yes.
But he didn't explicitly state that he was a Christian.
Yeah. So when it comes to like the universe, we can look at the broader universe and say, okay, this is obviously not compatible with the Christian worldview. So we have to like zoom in and look at the Christian worldview in the standpoint of like individual scenes and individual moments. Like where in the actions of the characters do we see any foreshadowings or types of Christ portrayed in the Avengers 2, or even in the first one, or even in any movie for that matter. Yes, there's heroism, there's goodness. I mean, it's good versus evil, with evil losing to good. But there's nothing. There's nothing in the smooth. When you zoom in smaller scale, that I thought was like, oh, that's an allusion to Christ, or like, that's something that the Christian worldview can give grounding for moral wise.
If you really stretch it, I could see someone saying the defeat of Ultron, someone who wants to be like a god, is basically putting humanity and machines in their place and saying that they are below God.
Yes.
But again, that's if I really stretch it.
Yes. Now you could say that the radical, I think in the end, where the city is flying through the sky, whatever, the willingness of the Avengers to sacrifice themselves for the sake of the people of this town.
Yeah, that is one thing that was mentioned a lot is we're probably going to die.
Yeah, we're probably going to die, but they still, do everything they can to save as many people, even to the point of Hawkeye almost getting killed.
Yeah, because that's like they're talking about how the only way we can stop it once it reaches a certain height is by destroying it in the sky. And they're like, well, if we're on here when it erupts, so be it. We have to stop all of humanity from being killed.
Yeah. Now, even though that heroism exists in a vacuum, that heroism certainly exists in a vacuum as far as the plot of the movie goes. They're not being heroic because they're not willing to sacrifice themselves because they believe that Christ sacrificed himself for others. Obviously, that part at least has better grounding on the Christian worldview because we have a reason to pursue that such radical sacrifice because A, it's already been demonstrated to us in Christ, and B, our actions do have eternal significance, and our actions have eternal significance on behalf of others. So there's not much in the way of. That's part of the reason why it's a lot of eye candy is that the worldview themes here, they're not as, I don't want to say like well fleshed out as it could have been.
And I'm pretty sure there's no one in the world that honestly subscribes to the worldview presented in the Marvel universe.
If there's someone like that who does, they need to get some help.
Yes.
They might be a little too into the whole comic book scene if they believe that.
Yeah.
So pinning this as far as worldview goes, I'm going to put it at a 6 only because it's not a very worldview conscious movie, and I mean, there are a lot of things about it that plainly don't stack up with the Christian worldview. Like okay, that's there.
But at the same time, it's not there to contradict the Christian worldview. It's just there to make a story.
It's a necessity to make the story possible. Mm-hmm. It's a necessity to make the story possible, and then also the moral elements of the movie that you could try to examine along the Christian worldview. There's nothing about it that like is inherently new or is inherently spectacular in any sense. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward superhero flick as far as the worldview elements go. There's no major worldview themes that are worth considering in this movie. Although I will say, and we should probably touch on this before we depart. From here, the scene at the very end where the Vision and Ultron are talking, and the Vision throws out this line and then moves on to something else, where they're talking about humanity and why the Vision wanted to save humanity and Ultron doesn't understand why. The Vision remarks, "There's grace in their failings," which there's not enough context to really develop that quote much than its face value. But if Josh Whedon was trying to attack Christianity with the Avengers, that line wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Because that line, "There's grace in their failings," that is a straightforward, this is linked to the Christian worldview thing. But it's a passing remark, really. It's not developed at all.
But even still, no one trying to attack Christianity would have the Vision say something like that.
Especially at like the closing moments of the movie.
If Ultron, if the villain is saying stuff that affirm Christianity, and then the Vision when saying stuff that counteracted that, that would be one thing. But the fact that it's a villain who's falsely interpreting the Bible, who is in the end defeated, that's not blasphemous. That's bringing justice to someone.
Yes, absolutely. That line from the Vision, though, was really interesting. There's grace in their failings, but it doesn't say who is giving that grace, like grace in their failings, like who is the grace extending from? I mean, where is this grace coming from and going to? And why does this grace even matter? So it's an interesting line, but they just kind of left it as a passing remark and not enough to develop it. So I'm going to pin it at a 6. Integration. I think the integration of the content of the vehicle, I think this is where the movie best succeeds. The movie is well produced. We've already hit on that. It's a lot of fun. It's very entertaining. And I mean, as far as message goes, it gets it across pretty straightforwardly. Like it's not obscured in any way, straight or form. Any messages that are in it, I think they get it out relatively straightforwardly. So as far as the integration goes, I'm going to put it at a 8-ish. Yeah, 8.
8.5.
Yeah, 8. Yeah, 8-ish. We'll say that. So at the end of the day, what am I going to pin this at? I'm going to pin it at a 7.5 as a movie overall. Again, thought it was great. Like I will, if I'm offered the chance to go see it again, I'm going to see it again.
Yeah.
I just thought the first one was better, and Brett and I disagree on that.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Because my thing at first, I was thinking as I'm watching this, this isn't as good as the first one, but I thought about it, and the first Avengers movie was hinted at for years. It was something that was built. Yeah, it was built up for a long time. So when it finally happened, it absolutely exploded. No one had seen anything like it before, and I mean, there was so much hype behind it,
And it delivered.
Delivered.
Yeah, it delivered the hype.
And then with Avengers 2, though, I mean, we're already expecting it. We've already seen something like it. So there's not as much hype to it. And so it wasn't going to, no matter what, it wasn't going to explode like the first one was. Like if this was a perfect 10 movie, it would not have exploded the same way Avengers 1 did.
Yes, although it did have a massive opening weekend. The numbers so far are showing that it's generated like 84 million for opening, which that's outstanding.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's crazy. So it's definitely breaking out. The reason why I think the first one is better, and we're running out of time, so we'll have to touch on this briefly, is that I thought this one, and this is, if I were to pin one singular complaint about this one, it would be that this one, they stuff so much into this movie. Some people, like you, like that. I thought that the simplicity and the straightforwardness of the first movie was better executed than the extremely stuffed and sometimes in places not as smooth in transition as the second one. I thought the first one succeeded better because it had a relatively straightforward, easy to follow plot line, and they pulled that off spectacularly. Better to do one thing excellently than try to do a bunch of things and miss and try to shotgun a bunch of things and have some of them miss the target.
Yeah, the only subplot I really thought missed the target was the whole Hulk and Black Widow romance.
That was weird. That was really weird.
Yeah, I'm just like, first off, I mean, there were hints at Black Widow and Captain America getting together in the most recent Captain America movie. So I'm just like, what happened to that?
Well, and then there were hints in the first Avengers that her and Hawkeye had a little bit of a whatever going, like a subtle whatever forming, I guess.
Yeah, but at the same time, it seemed to me like it was one of those in the past things, and they're basically like a buddy cop team.
I guess. But the whole Black Widow with Banner thing, it came entirely out of the blue.
Yeah, and I mean, if they would have maybe mentioned it, or like if they had a Hulk movie that featured her before this movie came out, or if they would have even just developed it better instead of just saying, hey, this is happening.
Yes. Which I think a lot could be said also of the opening scene. Because in the opening scene, there's this battle going on. You don't know who they're fighting, and you don't know why they should care. It's a beautiful fight scene. Like, it's extremely well orchestrated. But you don't know who they're up against, and you don't know why they're fighting them, and you don't know why you should care.
Well, you do quickly find out that it's Hydra.
Yes.
But still, at the very beginning, I was just like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And then also, apparently Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the episode of that week, like, led into that fight scene. So if I don't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I haven't seen any of it. I should, but I haven't. If we had followed it and, had been watching it, then that scene would have made more sense. Okay. But to the vast majority of people, it didn't. We can go on and on about this, and we probably will talk about it, down the road or later again, whatever. But we need to start wrapping up. Brett, you got any recos for this episode?
Yeah, to the frustration of Austin, I will have to recommend an anime I saw a few episodes of last night. Called
No. Stop. You're seriously gonna reco this?
Yes, with proper warnings.
Oh gosh.
The anime is called Azumanga Daioh. It is a slice of life style anime that is very Japanese and very over the top. It is not for everyone like Austin,
No.
who is absolutely frustrated and confused by it.
I literally thought I was on drugs. I thought I was on drugs and I was watching. I had no explanation for the images and the sounds that my brain was processing. I thought drugs was an only, like someone had drugged me. And this was what I was observing. I don't know why.
Again, it's not for everyone, but if you're deep into anime, it is the way to go. And actually, I saw an Evangelion style scene in there.
I saw a couple of things I was like, that could be related to Evangelion.
You know the scene where, I'm completely brain farting on her name, the chick who Shinji lives with?
Asuka?
No, the older
Oh,
one.
Misato.
Misato.
Yes.
Where she drinks a beer and then screams.
Well,
And there's a scene where someone drinks a drink and screams like that.
very, very Misato-y.
Yes.
Yeah, you can reco that all you want. I will not share that reco or share any endorsement of it in any way, shape, or form. Do I have a reco this week? Trying to think. Something, if I could reco something. Dang it, I'm drawing a blank.
You could go along with the superhero theme we've been talking about and something else we've been watching.
Daredevil.
Yes.
I want to reco Daredevil with a massive, massive caveat.
Yes.
I was talking with the students at church about this Wednesday night, and I was like, this is an outstanding show. I mean, we sat down Sunday and it was like, let's just watch an episode and see.
Yeah, let's see how it is. I've heard it's good. And then at the end of it, both of our mouths are just wide open, just like,
Yeah.
And before we know it, we've watched 5 episodes.
Yeah, before we know it, we sat down, we started watching it at 5, and then the next thing we knew, it was like 10:30.
Yeah.
And we're just like, oh, it's 10:30. What have we? Oh, we just watched 5 episodes of this. Caveat though, this is extremely violent
And extremely dark.
and extremely dark.
And the thing is, I'm a few episodes of Austin. He doesn't even know how dark it gets. It gets a lot darker than he thinks it gets.
So if you watched like The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises, and you thought that was pushing the boundaries for you, if you thought The Dark Knight was what was dark, that was tame.
Yeah, that was basically like Barney.
That was
compared to this.
child's play, and I am not. I have a tendency to exaggerate. I am not exaggerating here. I mean, there are things in this I've never seen in TV before. It is that violent.
And it's also a straight up Netflix original TV show, so they can pretty much do what they want.
Yes. So I got to caveat my reco with a strong warning that this is extremely violent. That violence makes sense in the world that it's presenting. That violence is not arbitrary or senseless or pointless. The violence is, I hate to use the phrase tastefully done, but it's
not
proper,
unnecessary.
It's proper to the world that it takes place in. So it's dark and extremely violent, but it's not unnecessarily so. I want to say that it fits the world that it's trying to build. But it's still extremely dark and extremely violent. Children, definitely not something for children or even really teenagers for that matter.
Yeah, it would have to be like, if I was going to show it to anyone, like the youngest I would probably say is like 17, 18 range.
Yeah. And I mean, the reason why I was talking about it with the students, because I was telling them, like, if you want to watch this, like, you need to know, like, I want to make sure you know going in that if you want to watch this, I mean, I'm not going to tell you, that you should or shouldn't watch this. I mean, that is between you and the Lord and your parents. Be warned that compared to The Dark Knight, which is considered at the moment to be one of the darker superhero flicks, one of the more darker ones, this makes it look tame and like child's play. So I gotta say the reco there with Daredevil. Also, I will also briefly reco, if you are a home brewer, I don't know who listening to our show is home brewing, if you're going to do any kind of fruit peels or fruit peels with your beer, do it beforehand. It takes a long time to get enough peel to where it's actually going to affect your beer. I mean, I probably was peeling limes last night for lime pale ale. I probably peeled limes for about an hour and a half just to get the amount that I needed for it to affect the flavor of the beer.
Wow.
Yeah, no joke. Like, it took forever. I honestly didn't think I was gonna have enough time before I started. I started peeling the limes like once I got the water on the pot, whatever, and I was peeling limes up until it was time for me to put the limes in the boil.
Yeah, like I got home around 9:30 and he was still brewing.
Yeah, and I was pretty much finished. That was the shortest brew I've done. That was less than 4 hours. So that was the quickest brew session I've ever had, and I got a full 5 gallons at the correct original gravity range. If you're not a home brewer, you don't know what any of those words mean. So I'm extremely excited.
Yeah, because that is a rarity.
Yeah, I was very happy. So I'll just echo that. Brett, thanks for taking time out of your Sunday morning to talk the Avengers with me and to do this show with me as usual.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for doing this with me as well.
Yeah, no problem. I enjoy doing this. This is one of my favorite things to do every week. And we always want to take time each episode to mention the gospel. The gospel is the lens through which we try to evaluate and process the entertainment that we consume, and it's necessary for us as Christians whenever we go see movies that we like to stack it up to the gospel, no matter how much we may like it or even how much we may dislike it. As Christians, our thinking ought to be influenced by the gospel. We ought to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, and that includes understanding the gospel and understanding its implications for the things that we watch or don't watch, or the things that we take in. We don't always do that perfectly. We don't always see things through the gospel because we are fallen sinners. We are screwed up, but Jesus has saved us from the penalty that was due our sin by taking that upon himself, and now we have life everlasting with him forever, not only just in the life to come, but in the life now. And this is an extension of that life that we have. So we don't want to hide any pretense as to why we do this. We do this because we are concerned about seeing the gospel in everything that we do. So yeah, this was a fun episode. It was nice to do a movie review for once.
Yes, especially over something as awesome as superhero movies.
Yes, especially as something as awesome as superhero movies. I think we can safely say the spoiler warning has now expired.
Yes.
It's safe to come out of the bunkers. The tornado has passed.
But if you've made it this far, then...
If you made it this far, then, well, whatever. If you want to contact us, you can get a hold of us on Facebook by searching for Another Ascending Lark. You can find us on Twitter at AALblog. Send us an email at anotheraascendinglark@gmail.com, or you can visit the new anotheraascendinglark.com to listen to the show there, to read stuff that we have written on the Christian worldview and albums and music and movies and video games and whatever the heck we write on. We write about whatever we want because that's just what we do. So next week, I don't necessarily know what's going down next week, but we will hopefully have we will have another great show planned for you. So thanks for listening. Go see the Avengers if you haven't. And if you have seen it, make plans to see it again. Other than that, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week.